On December 31st, 2023, a New Year's Eve party in the South Auckland suburb of Manurewa was alive and kicking. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, the start of something new. But just 3 hours into 2024, the party descended into absolute chaos, leaving one young man dead, another fighting for his life, while the 19-year-old male who was responsible was boasting about it on video. This documentary aims to present an honest and unfiltered account of the case surrounding Chaelim McCarthy. Chaelim McCarthy was born in 2004 and was reported as being a resident of the South Auckland suburb of Otara. Besides the information available through news publication websites, not much is publicly known about his background, though he is believed to have attended Aorere College, located in the South Auckland suburb of Papatoetoe. McCarthy was part of a tight-knit friend group known as Southbound. While they weren't a gang in the traditional sense, they were a collective of young men who were focused on fitness and boxing training. But late in the year of 2023, the discipline of the gym began to bleed into something more dangerous. Southbound had been locked in an escalating feud with a rival group from the West Auckland suburb of Kelston, dubbed the Kelly Boys. The catalyst for the feud occurred in August 2023, after McCarthy and an associate were attacked. The assault hospitalized his friend and left McCarthy himself injured, but more crucially, the dynamic shifted for McCarthy. For months, the resentment simmered deeply, but in December, the talk would turn into devastating action. On December 11, 2023, McCarthy and an associate discussed acquiring a firearm for intimidation purposes. The following day, McCarthy acquired a pistol-grip shotgun. Images captioned with gang signals were later retrieved from McCarthy's phone, showing him brandishing the firearm while wearing a balaclava. By December 24th, McCarthy and his associate discussed a New Year's Eve party that was being hosted by the associate's ex-girlfriend. The associate mentioned to McCarthy that his ex had previously dated a Kelly dude, aware that if both groups were to attend the party, there would be no doubt in anyone's mind that trouble would ensue. On December 26th, the pair discussed how someone they knew had stabbed up and robbed some members of the rival Kelston group. The associate messaged McCarthy, "So what, still keen for the New Year's party?" To which McCarthy replied, "All day, it's war." On December 31st, the morning of New Year's Eve, McCarthy was quoted with telling one of his friends he wanted to drink the new year after shutting Kelston down, having abstained from alcohol for most of 2023. As the evening approached, McCarthy packed his car. He didn't just pack beers for the party, he packed the shotgun, wrapped carefully in a bandana, and placed it in the boot of his car. At around 11:19 p.m., McCarthy and a friend arrived to the party on Addington Avenue, located in the South Auckland suburb of Manurewa. For most of the night, the party on Addington Avenue was uneventful. McCarthy spent the majority of the evening inside the garage, where the atmosphere was described as relaxed. But just 46 minutes into the new year, the female host of the party messaged McCarthy's associate that she had someone else coming and felt like he was going to start shit. At 2:33 a.m., McCarthy texted a friend about moving on from the party and going somewhere else, and at 2:56 a.m., a green Lexus arrived outside the party and would park across the road. Around 3 a.m., as McCarthy danced and drank, two men stormed the garage and began to assault those inside. McCarthy was beaten, having his earring ripped from his ear and two of his teeth broken. The attack lasted less than 2 minutes, with the assailants running back to their car, screaming profanities and shouting gang slogans, laughing as the two fled the scene. Left bleeding, intoxicated, and humiliated, McCarthy ran to the boot of his car and retrieved the pistol-grip shotgun, believing it had to be the Kelly Boys behind the garage attack. At that exact moment, the green Lexus from earlier on was attempting a U-turn and had backed on a grass verge. McCarthy, assuming it belonged to the men who had just beaten him, raised the shotgun to chest level and fired just meters away from the driver's side window. The single shot caused the Lexus to swerve and slam into a parked white van. He lingered just long enough to see that the car nor occupants were moving before fleeing the scene with his associate. Fueled by adrenaline and alcohol, he escaped to a property in West Auckland to lie low. But during the car ride to the property, cracks appeared to show in McCarthy's confidence. Admitting to the driver that he thought he recognized the green Lexus and was worried he might have shot the wrong people. He quickly buried the doubt and convinced himself that if they were there, they must have been part of the attacking group and quote-unquote deserved it. Safe at the West Side hideout, the doubt turned into boasting. McCarthy continued to drink and at 7:30 a.m. sent a text to one of his friends. "Just killed, 3 N-words." His friend replied asking if he was telling the truth, to which McCarthy sent a single-word reply, "Bible." Shortly after the single-word reply, he texted, "body baggies," and went on to further message his friend, "I'd do it again, Uso. They chose the gangster life." They want to be gangster. We showed them that life. At 7:47 a.m., McCarthy's associate took a screenshot of a New Zealand Herald article about the shooting, and at around 8 a.m., video footage showed McCarthy laughing and pillow fighting with a friend, celebrating what he thought was a victory in his so-called war. But as McCarthy celebrated and giggled away, reality was fighting for breath in an Auckland hospital. The occupants of the green Lexus that McCarthy had shot at just hours ago were in fact not a part of the rival Kelly boys. In a dramatic and tragic twist of irony, the occupants of the vehicle were part of McCarthy's own friend group. The driver was a 17-year-old unnamed associate, while in the passenger seat was 19-year-old Jaymis Faletolu. Jaymis and his friend had arrived at the party just 15 minutes before being shot, and had absolutely nothing to do with the fight that had occurred in the garage. The shotgun blast struck both Jaymis and his friend in their heads and upper bodies, with Jaymis taking the brunt of the impact. The 17-year-old survived, but was badly maimed by the blast, and at 2:20 p.m. on New Year's Day of 2024, Jaymis Faletolu had passed. When police arrived at Addington Avenue, they stumbled upon a chaotic scene. Officers discovered the green Lexus, smashed against the white van, with 2 teenage males critically injured inside. Homicide detectives worked quickly to piece together the timeline, with a crucial breakthrough coming from a neighbouring property's CCTV system. The footage captured a distinct muzzle flash at exactly 3:14 a.m., pinpointing the precise moment the fatal shot was fired. For 2 weeks, McCarthy remained at large. While the Faletolu family grieved and the surviving victim began an arduous recovery, police hunted for the shooter responsible. The trail finally led them to an address on January 17th, where they executed a search warrant and located McCarthy. They also found the murder weapon still inside McCarthy's car. However, he attempted to destroy the evidence as the pistol-grip shotgun had been chopped into 3 separate pieces. In the month of August 2025, the trial began in the Auckland High Court before Justice Laura O'Gorman. It was here, in the cold light of the courtroom, that 2 versions of 19-year-old Chaelim McCarthy would collide. McCarthy's lawyer, Ron Mansfield, described a young man far removed from the gangster persona he projected online. He argued that McCarthy was not a hardened criminal and claimed the balaclavas and gun photos were a misguided attempt to look cool. "They're looking like black American rap stars," Mansfield stated, and further said that McCarthy wasn't a little gangster. To support these claims, the defense pointed to the following facts. McCarthy held a full-time job working for his father and spent any spare time he had training at a boxing club. They also made note that prior to the shooting, McCarthy's criminal record was non-existent. The defense also introduced a psychiatric report diagnosing McCarthy with severe complex PTSD. They argued that his background, combined with the shock of the assault and his intoxication, meant he was acting on impulse, not murderous intent. They also claimed that the shot was supposed to be a warning shot aimed at the car's engine and not the occupants. But the Crown wasn't buying their narrative. Prosecutor Chris Howard pointed to the phone evidence, as the text didn't read like the words of a scared teenager, but more like the words of an executioner. "It's war. I'd do it again, Uso, body baggies." Howard argued that firing a shotgun at close range into an occupied car was an obvious and unreasonable risk. In his mind, this was retaliation, Howard told the jury, further stating that McCarthy was primed and ready to go off due to the long-running feud with the Kelly boys. Howard made it crystal clear, while the mistaken identity was tragic, the gunshot itself was no accident. The jury deliberated for 4 days. In the end, they looked past the defense's arguments, and Chaelim McCarthy was found guilty of murder. The sentencing took place on December 16, 2025. The courtroom was packed again with the victim's loved ones, as well as a large group of family and friends in support of McCarthy. But this time, the silence was loud and heavy with grief. The court heard the agonizing victim impact statements from the victims' families, including Jaymis Faletolu's father, Missy Faletolu. Missy told the court that the pain and guilt of losing his son would stay with him forever and delivered a crushing message to McCarthy. Jaymis's life was full of promise, and now it's been taken away in an instant because you thought you were tough. The devastation of that loss was reinforced by Jaymis's mother and aunt. While his mother described a family left shattered by the tragedy, his aunt paid tribute to the boy they had lost. She described how loving, cheeky, and caring Jaymis was, mentioning he was a person full of ambitions and goals that will now never be achieved. The court also heard the exhausting process of recovery for the surviving victim. He sustained a traumatic brain injury and underwent emergency surgery to remove his eye and portions of his skull, and was initially paralyzed on the left side of his body and unable to communicate clearly. The surviving victim's mother described the horrifying process of learning her son was in critical condition and then trying to put on a brave face to support him. She noted not just the financial and psychological damage the shooting has caused, but highlighted the lifelong physical impact it will have on her son. After hearing the victim impact statements and acknowledging how difficult the court process has been for the families and friends, Justice Laura O'Gorman had to come to a conclusion about the sentence. Defense lawyer Ron Mansfield argued that a sentence of life imprisonment would be manifestly unjust. He pleaded for a finite sentence, citing McCarthy's youth, his PTSD diagnosis, and his immaturity. He argued that McCarthy was a young man playing a role he didn't understand, and that locking him away for life would crush any hope of rehabilitation. Justice O'Gorman weighed these arguments carefully. While she acknowledged his youth, she could not ignore the extreme danger of his actions. She noted that by bringing a loaded shotgun to a party, McCarthy had created a lethal risk that no amount of immaturity could excuse. However, in a significant ruling, the judge agreed with the defense on the final penalty and declared that a life sentence would be manifestly unjust for an offender who was only 19 at the time of the shooting. Justice O'Gorman sentenced Chaelim John McCarthy to a finite term of 17 years and 6 months imprisonment, with a minimum non-parole period of 8 years and 9 months. The events of that fateful New Year's morning left nothing but wreckage in its wake. One young man is gone, another faces a lifetime of recovery, and 2 families are left completely shattered by a situation that is difficult, by all accounts, to comprehend. For Chaelim McCarthy, the side of him that the defense tried their hardest to depict, the hard-working son, the sportsman, the promising student, may have once well existed. A Ministry of Education article from 2019 features a 14-year-old McCarthy participating in the launch of a global IT program designed to groom bright students for a future in the technology sector. He had a pathway to success, but according to the defense's position, personal issues stemming from his mother's abandonment and an absent father early in life led McCarthy down a troubled path of self-destruction. In the end, the war McCarthy believed he was fighting existed almost entirely in his own head. He wanted the reputation of a gangster, and he got the consequences of one. Now he's facing years behind bars, serving a sentence for a murder that never should have happened. What are your thoughts on the importance of present parents in steering young men away from such decisions? And at what point is it an individual's own responsibility in dictating the outcome of their future? Also, do you agree with the judge that a life sentence would have been manifestly unjust, or do you think a life sentence would actually be justice served? Share your perspectives in the comments below. If you found this documentary informative, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more in-depth explorations of often overlooked, lesser-known stories. Who else would you like to see us detail next? Your engagement helps us continue to shed light on otherwise unheard narratives.